On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, Jalen Brunson has made some improvements this year. Where is he better? Where is he worse? What does it mean for the Knicks offense? We talk about it now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to remind you, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. That's right. We're introducing the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com, and you get writing from Alex and I, our team of national writers, including Katie Heindel, and of course, Josh Lloyd, the best fantasy basketball's men, is that a word? I don't know. In the business, that's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. I saw, Alex, we got our internal analytics today. We are fifth out of whatever the 30-plus podcasts in open rate, which means people have really enjoyed the newsletter when they read them. We are only 15th in subscription rate. I blame that on myself for not pushing it hard enough. So please subscribe. It's really fun. It's really good writing, and it's like a good way to keep up with the pod if you don't have an opportunity to listen to the full episode. But hopefully you do listen to the full episode. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But first, we want to remind you that today's show is sponsored by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, if you do want to listen every day, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, hit that notifications bell to ensure you don't miss an episode. Leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. It all helps the podcast, which is also obviously free. But who's shilling for subs? I'm Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster and the Saturday host of the Locked On NBA podcast. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrict.land. And fortunately, the New York Knicks, which was certainly not true when we started this podcast, are home to one of the greatest players in the world, and that is Jalen Brunson. He's arguably been even better this season. Alex, I'll leave it to you to kick off this discussion. What are some areas you've noticed improvement for Jalen Brunson so far this year?
Yeah, so this was a continuation of our mailbag.
I should have noted that. I stole his idea, which I feel bad about because we've met in person before. So shout out to Adrian Chatham at Magic Age 683. We met during the Batman movie. I'm hoping we can see the Batman 2 together. Maybe we can set that up in 2026. But Alex, I'll leave it to you. What was his question?
Yeah, so Adrian hit us back up, asked one question on our first mailbag show yesterday, and then asked us another question, which we thought would make a great full episode. But if anyone still has questions, again, we'll just say, feel free to leave a YouTube comment or hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Knicks, and let us know, because we'd love to keep talking through them this week, even once the Knicks start playing again, because it's the most fun to talk about what you guys want to talk about. But Adrian wanted to know, this season, Jalen's scoring has come down a smidge with so many potent weapons to work with. He's gotten better at feeding teammates and getting them involved as the games have gone on. Do you think he's much better this year? And his approach was a little your turn, my turn at the beginning, but I think he's become less ball dominant, as is the Tibbs way, and has deferred more than I thought. So what do you guys think he's doing better? Is he doing anything worse? I definitely notice he's more well-rounded this year. Then Adrian did tag us like minutes afterwards in the replies to a B-ball index tweet that was like number one or like top 10 ball dominant players in the NBA this year, and Jalen Brunson was right there at number one. And their definition was players with the ball in their hand the most, and Jalen Brunson was number one. So he kind of said immediately after, like, well, haha, I guess I was wrong. But I don't necessarily know that he's wrong. I think eye test and just sort of the sniff test would say the Knicks are moving the ball better this year. They're setting franchise records for assists in a game. It just in general, it feels like a more beautiful brand of basketball when they're at their best. Of course, they've had some times, especially recently, where some guys have been struggling a little bit shooting. They've had to kind of go back a little bit more to Brunson, with the ball in his hands and driving the action a little more than they were for that stretch, maybe like 10 or so games ago, where things were really firing on all cylinders for multiple games in a row. But Gavin, there's been, some areas he's been better, some areas he's been worse, and some areas where he's been kind of the same. Surprisingly, in the passing, he's been more similar, but in other aspects of offense, he's actually gotten quite a bit better this year.
Yeah, he's made a leap in efficiency in some key areas. Some of them not as much as I thought, but we can go through them one by one. So his overall efficiency, which I choose to measure by effective field goal percentage, if you use true shooting, use points per shot attempt, doesn't really matter. He's up in all of them. 2% up over his Knicks career high. He was more accurate in Dallas, but you have to take into account the spacing there was about as good as it is on this Knicks team. And of course, he had a smaller role. A lot of times he was going up against opposing bench units. And of course, he got to play off Luka Doncic. Rim accuracy, I think, is the single biggest thing we talked about with him after the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, of like all the areas that Towns was going to make Jalen Brunson a better player. He should inevitably get better at the rim when you're going from Mitchell Robinson, who has just about the least gravity in the league, or he has a ton of gravity. Unfortunately, he is right at the basket 90% of the time, and that's the only place his gravity works. So he's pulling the opposing big towards the rim, unless he was the one setting the screen. And even then, there would be a big rolling down the lane with him. So that was and you go from that to Karl-Anthony Towns, who's like supposedly the best big man shooter of all time. That should be way, way up. And it's up, but not by quite as much as I would have thought. He's 66% at the rim. That's 67th percentile amongst point guards. He was 60% a year ago at the rim. So that's better. And I think it's also worth noting that a Knicks career high, 22% of his shots are coming at the rim. So not only is the accuracy up, the volume's up. So that's good, but it hasn't quite been great. The volume's been below average, just 44th percentile for a point guard. And again, the efficiency there is 67th percentile, which is good, not great. So I kind of want to like put a pause on that and go to you. Like, what have you felt about his finishing this year? I think some of it is just that he's not an elite athlete. Like, obviously the single highest percentage shot you could take at the rim is a dunk. He's never really getting a dunk in the half court. And at times, like, it still feels like the lane is relatively clogged just because teams are so wary of Jalen and his speed and like sending extra defenders his way. Another thing is like he just takes a lot of hard hits, a lot of shots that would be easy layups end up being free throws or fouls that aren't called.
Yeah, well, that sort of, I was about to spoil another stat that we were going to get into in a second, which is the fouls aspect of the whole thing. So he's shooting free throws at a career high 14% of his shot attempts, which, as you noted in our notes, is 90th percentile, which is great. That said, I think for all the ones that don't get called, which he seems to think there's a lot, I would agree. I really do think that there's been a lot of attempts, particularly for him, where he gets, I mean, him and Cat, but I think Cat sells it a little bit more sometimes with the like just getting up such a head of steam that then he gets inside and he just kind of falls over because he's going so fast, that, and then he doesn't have a stanchion in his way, so he kind of just like bails out. Brunson, I think, legitimately is hitting the deck because he's getting whacked a lot of times. And you see so many times that he ends up on the floor. There's no call. The shot misses. The other team, gets rolling in transition or whatever. I think that for as great as he is or has been at drawing fouls this year, I think he could be potentially leading the league if all the ones that probably should be called were called. And I think that kind of adds up to that rim shooting number too. But also, I do feel like he is making more of them, which does bear out in the numbers. Like, I mean, a 6% leap is nothing to sneeze at. Like, that's pretty huge. I mean, particularly for, an area where he's always been, he's been not as good with the Knicks in particular. For him to finally have that leap, I think it does speak to the town spacing. But also just the fact that, I mean, I think his touch is really good. I think that he's showing, a little more willingness to get all the way in there too, rather than going for the floater. And I think that helps too. I mean, that's also leading to more scenarios where he's getting fouled and it's possibly not getting called or whatever too, because when you get all the way to the rim, you give yourself a greater chance of drawing a foul, which then we see is bearing out that he is drawing more. So in general, I feel like he is doing better at getting to the rim and then obviously finishing there. And it does seem pretty evident to me so far this year.
Yeah, I would be interested to see like a total rim attempts, including ones where you're fouled. If someone knows a site that has that and could link us, that would be great, because that would presumably be pretty high based on the fact that, again, he's 90th percentile in getting fouled. His long mid-range accuracy is up this year, 46% from 43% last season. That's closer to his career norm. So I'm going to choose to say last season, I think, was a product of dead legs at times. Like, especially I like you go back to those last 20 games, like when OG was hurt, when Julius was hurt, when Bogey was kind of in and out of the lineup, it was only playing like 12 minutes a game. He just had such a load on him. Like, I think it was hard for him to take those shots. We saw his 3-point shooting fall off. We saw his deep 3-point shooting, which is an aspect of his game that I'm a little surprised hasn't been super resurgent this year. I thought there'd be more of that. It's not really, but it makes sense that he's a little bit better there. And it makes sense he's better from three because, again, he had that drop off towards the end of last season in his 3-point accuracy. Overall this year, he's up to 43% from 40% on threes, which is obviously good. The one thing to note is, much like his rim volume, his 3-point volume is still not particularly good. It only comprises 33% of his total shot attempts, which is actually quite a bit worse than his rim volume is pretty much average. His 3-point volume is bad. It's 26th percentile in the NBA. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go. But I think that goes back to that ball dominance thing where, unless you're Steph Curry or Trae Young or Damian Lillard or Luka Doncic, like, it's hard to generate a ton of threes off the dribble. You need some catch and shoots in there. And the Knicks, partially because Jalen just has the ball so much, have not been very good at getting him easy looks from three or looks, period, from three, even difficult looks. Like we saw the other day, I think Mikal hit him for one against the Magic, where he hit a three with like a guy like on a great closeout and just put it in the guy's eye. I think it was Tristan da Silva. Just needs to get more of those, and I think the 3-point volume will go up. But that's something to note. And we mentioned the foul shooting. The only other thing there is a career high 97th percentile in non-shooting fouls drawn. He continues to be just an absolute killer. That's taking charges. That's, of course, just kind of like setting a screen and letting someone run into you. Like he is a genius at that. Coming up next on Locked On Knicks, we're going to talk about Jalen Brunson's passing. Alex, you did a deep dive on those numbers, why it might not be as big of a leap as we've talked about and others have talked about, and what's the reason behind that. We'll talk about it in just a sec. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at GameTime. So here's what makes GameTime so special. They're focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. I am always jonesing to get some Knicks tickets gifted to me. I actually don't know if I've ever gotten Knicks tickets in my life. So friends, family that are listening, do your job, hook it up for Hanukkah/Christmas. It'll be easier than ever if they go to GameTime. They have a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Alex, I use the GameTime Picks feature. I've talked about it a lot. I'm going to be in DC this holiday season. I want to go to the Knicks Wizards game. The tickets have gone up a little bit because of GameTime. They're still not particularly expensive. You can get into the building for $40. So I am certainly going to take advantage of that. The other really special thing about GameTime that is literally, as far as I know, unique to their site is the lowest price guarantee, which means if you find a lower price ticket in a similar section on another site, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So GameTime is literally always the best option. All in pricing, make sure that you get the total up front, and it takes the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? GameTime.
And today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Rocket Money. And did Rocket Money ever help you find any subscription you forgot about that you were paying for twice? It definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And I use another feature with Rocket Money pretty consistently, which is their bill renegotiation. So if you hate calling your cable company to ask them why after a few months after you start a new deal that you're paying basically double for your cable or for your internet or whatever. Rocket Money will do that for a nominal fee. They usually just charge a small percentage of what they save you for the whole year, which to me is well worth not having to sit on hold for hours on end and deal with the customer service people and all the issues with that. So just another great Rocket Money feature. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking through this great question from our buddy Adrian Chatham, just asking what's different with Brunson this year? What's going on? Why does it feel like he's making such a huge leap? And we've talked about the scoring, and I think that we can agree, like, there's some areas that maybe we'll get into in the last segment where things have regressed a little bit and it's a little weird. But things have generally gotten better for him on offense. I will say too, interesting thing. So I did look on cleaning the glass. And as far as like the rim percentage of how much he's taking there on volume, they do actually count shots where he drew fouls as well,
Oh,
which is interesting. So I did look that up. So it says he's drawn 18 fouls at the rim, which puts him at like about one a game. But again, I feel like that could easily be 1.5 per game if all of them were getting called or whatever. We'll see if things kind of progress in the way that they usually do with NBA officiating, where things get where they get more willing to call fouls the more the season goes on, probably because they get tired of players lobbying them all the time and just start giving in and just doing the calling the fouls. But we'll see how that ends up going. But that is interesting just still to see that it's still a fairly low percentile for him getting to the rim and actually taking those attempts. But passing wise, I feel like you and I have talked a lot recently about how Brunson has had some positively, like, feels almost like Chris Paul-esque, games out there where he just goes out there and decides, you know what, I could score 30, but instead I'm just going to get like 15 assists today because I know that my teammates can make the shots and I know that I can break down the defense and whatever. So I started looking into those numbers a little bit just because I was curious, is the assist percentage getting higher? Is his usage percentage getting higher? Is like the assist to usage percentage, vastly different? What's happening with the overall assists? Because I think it's well noted, like he's currently setting a career high in assists per game and all that. But just getting into the numbers a little bit. So his assist percentage this year is at 34.4%. That's up about 1 point from last year, but not demonstrably higher. And I guess higher than when he first started with the Knicks, which was 28.7, which was his career high at that time. That did go up to 33.5 last year, but now sitting at 34.4% this year. Not a huge percentage jump. So that's like the percentage of possessions where he has the ball where it ends in an assist. His usage percentage is down a little bit. Again, Adrian had theorized like that he's all in all like just being utilized less. That's sort of the case, but not hugely. I mean, he's still higher than his first year with the Knicks, where he was at 27.2%, but a little lower than last year. He was at 32.5% last year. This year, sitting at 29% usage. So, but things are like within a margin there where it still feels similar. So then I started looking at just like the assists per game numbers. So pretty well documented. He's up to 7.7 assists per game this year versus 6.7 assists per game last year. But then I was like, okay, here's where I expected to find something revelatory, right? I was like, well, NBA, like the NBA and NBA.com/stats, great website. If anybody ever wants to just poke around, they have all kinds of hidden stuff in there, hidden gems that you can find. They have a potential assists number on there in their passing section, which shows you how many passes that basically like how many passes end in shot attempts from a player per game, which means that they could have potentially been an assist. And then, if they go in, it's an assist. If not, still counts towards this potential assist number. I thought that number would be more even over the 2 years. I thought that would actually be kind of like that they would be similar, but maybe the explanation for Brunson's assist leap this year is just we're being fooled and there's actually just more of the balls are going in because the team is shooting better. But actually it was almost exactly congruent. So 13 assists or potential assists per game this year to 7.7 actualized assists versus 12 potential assists last year to 6.7 actualized assists. So both of them are literally just one off of each other.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. So I guess maybe that means that he is just like, whatever, like not even 10%, passing 10% more, whatever it works out to 7-8% more this year. But recently in his last 14 games, he is up to 8.6 assists per game, and his potential assists are up to 14.6. So that is demonstrably higher than in previous years. So I guess that's sort of the explanation, but I don't know. I'll let you react to those numbers now, Gavin. Like, I was sort of surprised by them a little bit. Like, I don't know. I was looking for something that would say, here's the passing leap to me. And I thought maybe it would be assist percentage or something. And yet everything is kind of just cruising along. I think that we're just seeing him make a little bit more of an effort to make passes, but he is still, when he needs to be, kind of a monolithic offensive guy that does still take a lot of shots and has to for this team to win a lot of nights.
Yeah, a couple of theories. I think one thing to note in the recent leap is I think Mikal Bridges making a leap has made a substantial difference. Like early season, you saw over and over again, he was really trying to spoon feed Mikal because they're good friends. He's a great teammate, and he wanted to get him going. And he said, like, hey, I'm going to like look for you in transition. I'm going to find you in the corner. I'm going to find you in the wing. And over again, we saw not so much from the corners, but certainly from literally every time he shot from the wing, pretty much clank, 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 over and over and over again. And now that Mikal's gone from like a 28% 3-point shooter to I think a 43% 3-point shooter over his last 10, 12 games, that's an extra assist or two a night for Jalen Brunson. So it could be that simple. The total potential assist number could be, that's partially Mikal, could just be reflective of some noise over the first 26 games, and teammates are shooting worse on his passes. I do think part of what's limiting the overall number too, and what's limited the number his entire Knicks tenure, or sorry, more so this year, is that in the past, he would get some spoon-fed assists because you would have someone like Julius or RJ driving to the rim, drawing 2 or 3, kick out to Jalen Brunson, desperation close to Jalen, and then Jalen just kind of makes the simple next pass and hits someone else for a layup or someone else for a wide open 3. This year, just because there's less on the ball creation away from him, which is where you get that number 1 in ball dominance number, I think that you are not getting those spoon-fed assists that he got in the past. So that's where his like hard passing could get better, and his easy passing opportunities just haven't been there. Those are just theories. I don't have numbers to back them up, but that's where I guess you're getting some of this. And some of it was that he was already a pretty darn good passer this year. I think the main area we've seen him improve is pick and roll craft, because Karl-Anthony Towns actually affords him like a really skilled partner, where Julius was mostly setting screens to get switches and attack those switches, and Mitch could roll, but like it was not kind of a consistent partnership between him and Jalen, partially because Mitch has been hurt a lot in Jalen's time here. But that's just kind of my initial read on it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, though, because also with eye test, I didn't write this number down, but I looked it up because I was just kind of running out of time to write things down. And my fingers were tired. But I looked up the amount of pick and rolls. And, granted, this is a little imperfect because it's NBA.com tracking, which isn't always perfect. We see that, like, especially with like their individual defensive matchups and stuff, that sometimes it is a little deceptive if you go back and actually watch the tape or whatever. But it according to them, the Knicks are actually averaging, I think it was like 5 or 6 less pick and roll plays per game too this year, which is crazy because you wouldn't think that. Like, it seems like they are running more, but I guess that like that Brunson and Hartenstein pick and roll was just such a staple last year that it's actually been run. They were running that more than they're currently running the Cat and Brunson pick and roll, even though when you look at their pick and roll efficiency, they've gotten like a full 0.1 points per possession better, which is huge. Like, that's not a small improvement. They've gone from like, I think it's like 0.94 to like 1.06 points per possession on pick and rolls this year so far. So maybe if we're looking for the area where Brunson could actually continue taking a leap and then see those actualized gains, like in his assist per game numbers, like the raw assist per game numbers and stuff like that, maybe the simple answer is just lean into that pick and roll more and start running it as much as you were running the Hartenstein pick and rolls last year. Because I'm sorry, I think I said 14 possessions. It's actually like 14% of their possessions this year versus 20% last year or something like that. So maybe that's the solution. Maybe you just got to start running more of those, and then that creates more pick and pop opportunities or whatever. But it's all just very interesting. I was looking for like this golden goose number, and I just didn't find one when I was looking through his passing stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think last year the pick and roll was more initiating every possession because you were so reliant on Jalen. While this year, even though it's not more substantial, it feels more substantial because they actually play out the string with the pick and roll. And it's more often resulting, I would guess, again, having looked at the numbers here, Jalen shooting or Karl shooting, where last year it wasn't about Jalen shooting and it really wasn't about Isaiah shooting most of the time. It was about, can we get a mismatch? Can we get a 4-on-3 and let Isaiah play out of 4-on-3? Can Jalen get a mismatch, attack the mismatch, draw help, then kick it out and give someone else an advantage? While this year, like, it's just so deadly with the two of them, they don't have to do that as much. Though I do think it would be helpful for Jalen and his longevity if he does get off the ball in those situations, right? And when they do draw a third defender and when a team commits a third defender, say, hey, I'm going to trust Mikal. I'm going to trust Josh. I'm kicking it to you, not with a defense at a standstill, but a defense where you have an advantage. You guys go to work. Last thing I'll note on this before we kind of get into the big picture of what this all means. StatMuse, I looked this up. I'm surprised they were the one site that had it. I know the NBA.com is secondary assists. They have hockey assists, and they have Jalen Brunson at 9th in the NBA in, you know what? I'm gonna cut this because it says hockey assists, but I think it's just total assists. So we will skip that. But the NBA website has Jalen with 0.9 secondary assists per game. So take that for what you will. It's something like 30th in the NBA. Maybe that scenario has improved. I'm not quite sure. But with that, we will take a quick break. When we come back, we will get into what this all means next on Locked On Knicks.
But first, we're going to let you know about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 115 bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And if I'm looking at something to place a bet on, I'll save my Jets hate for a couple more days. Maybe we'll hit that a little later in the week because we got Knicks at Timberwolves coming up on Thursday. So when the Knicks return to action, they're going to be at the Timberwolves. They are obviously that's going to be Cat's homecoming to Minnesota. It's going to be a potential Julius and Dante revenge game or whatever. The thing I'm looking at, the Knicks are currently 2-point underdogs. So actually, if you just bet the money line for the Knicks to win, it's at plus 114 right now. I think I would bet that. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just buying into a Cat revenge game going back to his old home versus Dante and Julius, looking to scorch the Knicks. Perhaps I will eat those words if Dante DiVincenzo is infused with the power of friendship, with his friends being so close to him, and goes off. But right now, I would say bet the Knicks. I feel pretty good about the Knicks coming off that win the other day to come out there and punch the Timberwolves in the mouth a bit. So if you want to do it, you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We also want to tell you about our newest friends here at Locked On, or one of our newest friends. We have a lot of new friends here at Locked On, but over at BILT. Today's episode is sponsored by BILT Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to BILT, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable BILT points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to BILT members. I love using points for travel, and BILT makes it so easy to turn rent into rewards. I've said it, I'm flying a lot back to the East Coast, a lot back to the West Coast. So it's great for me. And if you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. All right, so let's get into what this all means. I've kind of hinted at it. I'm curious your thoughts on it. My big picture takeaway was that he's still really reliant on his mid-range shot. And that's not a bad thing because he's one of the better mid-range scorers for any point guard and frankly, any player in the NBA. But that includes some good, not great efficiency there. Like the one area he's sort of trended downwards in terms of efficiency is his short mid-range, which we always see like floater skill, floater volume. He's consistently near the top of the NBA. That's not so much the case this year. I believe that's 6 to 10 feet. down from 52% from there to 45%, 7%. That is a pretty substantial drop off. His volume is also down a good amount from 41% of his shots his first year on the Knicks to 33% of his shots from that distance this year. I think the volume going down is a really good thing because it means he's taking more threes, he's taking more layups, but the long mid-range shots haven't really changed that much. So I'm looking for Jalen to get more efficient shots. How does that happen? It's kind of what I've been saying all episode. It's getting him off the ball. It's giving someone, I think like Mikal Bridges in particular, Alex, who is fresh off a year and a half of boarding school in Brooklyn, and he might not have liked it there, but the experience made him stronger, right? He got to figure out what it is to be a number one option in the NBA, how you handle being a number one option in the NBA, and now he gets to do it without the best defender on the team guarding him, sometimes even the worst defender on the other team guarding him. I think if he was fairly efficient and effective with the best guy on him, he should be able to take on-ball reps with the worst guy on him, and in turn, create more shots for Jalen. I think Josh Hart can also do that. I think that would have been a great way to attack the Hawks the other night because Trae Young was guarding one of those guys pretty much the whole game, and the Knicks never seemed to go to it with any kind of consistency. Not that Minnesota is maybe a bad example because they don't have a lot of bad defenders. I'm just hoping over the next few games we see the Knicks lean into that a little more, get Jalen down that totem pole in terms of ball dominance.
Yeah, I guess we'll see, where they end up going in that way. I will say in regards to like the short mid-range percentage being down, I wonder how much of that is like, I do wish one thing that I hope that someplace maybe will be like B-ball index because they're usually the place to go for these like oddball stats. But I hope someplace like finds a way to distill short mid-range into shots versus floaters sometime soon, because I feel like if there's just not really like great floater data available anywhere on the basketball internet other than just watching the plays. But like, I do feel like anecdotally, we were talking about Brunson getting to the rim a little more, at least it seems like slightly more, even if the numbers aren't like quite there. Like, I feel like he is trying those attempts a little more than just bailing out and going floater this year, which maybe has to do with the nature of his relationship with like how he approaches a pick and roll with Cat versus how he would approach it with iHeart too, where iHeart, he was kind of like iHeart was always floating towards the basket, which then would leave that floater more open for Brunson. Whereas now like Cat pops to the perimeter more, which then makes it so Brunson can get all the way to the hoop. And then it's like, well, you may as well at that point. But like those short mid-range numbers encapsulate both like those short 2-point shots that he takes, like where they're actual jumpers, and floaters, which I feel like are down this year, but there's no way for us to really check those numbers. So it's kind of just like eye test only, or go back and watch every game 4 times like Tibbs. Maybe Tibbs would know that off the top of his head, how many floaters Brunson's taken this year. But that's one thing that kind of stands out to me with that like short mid-range number being a little down, is that I do feel like he is taking less floaters than he did last year, but I don't really have a way to prove it, unfortunately, without going back. So maybe it's just something to pay more attention to in games going forward. But yeah, all in all, like I am with you. Like I do think, I think one thing, and this sort of goes back to the first segment, maybe to bring this like full circle, but like talking about him taking less or not taking as many like assisted shots, and as many like spot ups necessarily. I do think they need to work to get more of those in there. And I do think that's something that was lost with swapping Cat for Julius Randle, is that Randle was going to often run those possessions where he would hunt that double team and then look to kick out someone, whether it was DiVincenzo, whether it was Brunson, OG for a brief, shining, beautiful amount of time that in January last year, or of this year, I should say. But like, you miss out on that now. Like, you're not running those sort of sets as much, and Hart sort of has started doing that, but usually Brunson is involved a little bit more up top with some form of a handoff to Hart, or he's just kind of spacing the floor up there and isn't necessarily the target of the pass, where it's mostly going to Mikal or OG in the corners if Hart's running the possession. So I don't know, just a little something to keep in mind. Like, I feel like they need to find a better way, whether it's with Hart or someone else, or maybe just get Mikal in motion or OG in motion to allow Brunson to float to the corner more often to take a corner 3 off the catch. Like, little things like that, I feel like they could do to create more of those opportunities for Brunson, because as we see every year, if you look at the numbers, and this is the case for a lot of players, but like for Brunson, for as great as he shoots off the dribble, he shoots even better when he just gets to set his feet and take a shot. So I hope that we get to see more of that at some point this season as they continue figuring things out.
Yeah, just to put a number on it, and this is one I probably should have got to earlier. Last season, 59% of his threes were assisted. This year, 49% of his threes are assisted. So that is a pretty substantial drop off, and it's something to watch. In total, only 2% less of his shots are assisted. So I guess he's getting assists in other places, but the Knicks need to find a way to get him easier shots. And I think in general, like not relying on Jalen to do everything will probably up their 3-point volume a little bit. And right now they're still only 20th in the NBA in 3-point attempts. I know preseason you predicted they'd be top 3. I'm not saying that to clown you. I'm saying that because they should be top 3. They have the shooting talent to be top 3, but they don't have a lot of guys who throughout their careers have been super high volume 3-point shooters. So there's certainly a psychological barrier there, but I also think part of it is letting other guys handle the ball, letting other guys create shots, and then Jalen just has to get them up. Mikal just has to get them up. Josh just has to get them up. OG just has to get them up. Cat just has to get them up, because all those guys are really good shooters and are in, like someone like Hart, like much improved this season. So I'm hoping the 3-point volume goes up. I'm hoping Jalen Brunson has to do less, but I think this was a cool examination of what he's doing well and what he can continue to work on. So next time we talk to you, we will have one more episode, and then we'll be recapping that Timberwolves game. So that's one I'm really excited for. Stay subscribed and Locked On Knicks. Comment, 5-star review, all that good stuff, and we'll talk to you soon.